Hi, friends. My name is Yarrow, and you're listening to the Embodied Business Podcast. Hello, hello. It is a very sunny Wednesday morning in November. Tomorrow is my birthday. Woo woo. I'm very excited, to be honest. And I want to talk to you about getting your business ready for winter. So I'll share both practical tips around boundaries and offerings and systems and all that kind of stuff. But I also want to talk a little bit about how you can make space for yourself to have this seasonal aspect of your business, which I think is really beautiful and really needed and actually really helpful. All right. So just a few announcements before we start. I have my next free business retreat coming up on January 21st and 22nd. It's a really fun weekend. I hope you'll join us. That's free. I'll link to it in the show notes. And then I also have a creative 5-day winter retreat coming up over New Year's Eve. It's $90. It's 5 days of hanging out together, focusing on creativity and projects and chill and rest and tarot spreads and meditations and just goodness to kind of tie us over from this year into the next. Sign up is through the Making app. You need a free account. It just takes a minute and I would love to have you there. All right. Now about getting your business winter ready. So in the last few years, I really have made it a big priority to take good time off over the holidays to really kind of be in a totally different headspace. And I'm noticing that sometimes a week is just not good enough. Sometimes in a week, I just kind of, get into a flow of having a lot of unstructured time and then suddenly it's already over. And I found that taking a little bit more time just really helps me enjoy this season for what it is and also come up with good ideas. So even if I want to think of it as like, is it worthwhile as an investment in my business? I found that it really is. And I also want to say that that's not always been possible for me. And I don't want you to beat yourself up if you're having to work over the holidays for whatever reason. That's not what this is about at all. Okay, so I think a really great first step is to think about your relationship with the holidays and winter in general. What is coming up for you? What is feeling stressful or uncertain? I think for me, and probably for many others, what feels difficult is being reminded of this deep isolation we've been through in the last 2 winters. Those were really lonely times for me, and while I had, beautiful friendships online and took classes and had a really beautiful nest that I felt so grateful for, it was really a lonely time. And I think we have to remember that our bodies also remember that, and that maybe the leaves turning now and things getting colder again, there's, even if it's not conscious, a part of us that remembers like, oh shit, in the last few years that meant really turning inward, and that can be confronting. So I think there's that. For me, there's also an awareness that in Scotland there will be a lot less daylight. So I'm going to structure my days a little bit differently, especially with the dogs. And I'm also thinking about, how will I bring light into my life in other ways with candles and with a sad lamp. And then for the holidays, I think the last few years I've not been with my family for Christmas for the last 3 Christmases now, and it's been a mixed bag, I would say. A lot of the time I really miss them and miss the kinds of Christmases that we used to have. My grandparents are quite old, so there was a real sense of like heaviness around like missing what might be one of the last few Christmases with them. And on the other hand, I also really noticed like how I love that downtime for myself, and how traveling home can be a big undertaking at a time of the year that's not known in my life for its bursts of energy and exuberance, I would say. And that it can be quite depleting to spend most of my downtime traveling around, meeting people, being in a different country, even if it's my home country technically, but it's still I'm away from my routines, from my own home, from my things, and that can be a lot as well. So just checking in with where you're at with that stuff. I have decided this year that I'm not going home for Christmas, but I'm traveling home in mid-December for a few days. And that will be the second visit home since the pandemic began. I first went back in the summer. And I wish I could stay longer, but I think that's just not going to be realistic for me this year. And so I've planned kind of really short and sweet celebrations with my family. And I'm really grateful that I'm not going to be traveling when everyone is traveling. And that was my main intention with doing it that way. Because I covered in the summer, I certainly want to try my very, very best to avoid catching it again if I can. I'm still really careful, and I just don't want to take any risk that isn't really well thought out and meaningful to me. So that's how I'm doing it. And then once I'm back, I have 5 weeks, which is a really long time. Actually, it's 4.5 anyway, where I'm really kind of scaling back massively. So I'm not having like a hard stop or like a total time off. I will definitely occasionally check my emails because it is a long time. I will also be teaching some classes, such as the 5-day creative retreat. But what I am doing is I'm taking a break from doing interviews for my podcast, from doing any web design or tech support work. I'm not going to have feeler calls or any kind of one-on-one calls with people. I'm also going to deinstall all the communication apps from my phone. I'm going to have a good autoresponder in place. So really, it's technically just the classes in my community that I'm going to show up for. And I'm actually really excited for those because they give my week a little bit of structure, and otherwise there will be a lot of spaciousness to rest and think about the year, and what I want to do next. So here's a few things that I would recommend you think about if you also want to have a little bit more spaciousness and you're in a place where you can make that happen for yourself. Firstly, if you are allowing people to book into your calendar, if you're someone who offers services or feeler calls or any of that nature, maybe block some time off over winter where you're not gonna take any of those calls. If you're offering physical products, I think it's a really good idea right now to think about when your latest or your last holiday orders will go out, and to make that very clear both on your website. If you're on social media, you can say it there. It's the 9th of November, and I think, it can become so stressful, I know, in the coming weeks for product-based businesses. So really thinking about what you need at this time, maybe letting your friends know that this is, the busiest time of the year for you, that they can expect to be, around you again when it's over, but also being very clear with your deadlines and boundaries with your customers. If you're teaching or you're running groups, maybe you want to announce now that there will be a bit of downtime. Maybe you're scaling that back a little bit. I'm telling people, for example, that I'm not going to check in every day to answer questions in my community, maybe just once a week or so. And that's just also giving other permission to really, other members in your community permission to think about what they want from this time. I think it's great to model taking time to rest. You might also want to put a nice autoresponder in place. I think that's a good idea any time of the year, but just to say, hey, I'm taking some downtime. Thank you so much for reaching out. Here's what you can expect. And then also maybe offering something in the meantime. So I have a fairly clear autoresponder. It says that I'm not answering all my emails. So I'm getting a lot of spammy emails about people who clearly haven't listened to the podcast but want to pitch a guest. And I used to reply to all of them, and I would just feel like, gosh, if you haven't even really read what I'm talking about, then I don't really want to have an email conversation. So anyway, I'm also ending that autoresponder by saying, here are the free resources that I'm offering for people to enjoy. These are the podcasts that I run. These are free upcoming weekend retreats I offer, and so forth. So I think that's it's just kind, and it's clear, and it's generous, and I think that's what we need in how we shape internet culture, right? Another thing you might want to think about is if you're having that restful time, I think that's a really, fruitful fertile space for new ideas to come forward. And I don't mean to say that, this is the time where you're going to map out the whole year and you're going to make it all happen. I don't really think about the year ahead until the light returns, kind of later in January or February, and that feels good for me. So it's not kind of like this really intentional, like I'm gonna map this all out and I'm gonna use my downtime in this particular way. But just being aware that when we rest and when we think about other things, like when we're in the shower, for example, we're driving, so often we have these really amazing ideas and we actually process a lot of what's been happening and really get clearer on how we're feeling about things. And so I really make a point, especially in winter, to write my dreams down, to work with my tarot deck, to sit at my altar, to journal whenever I can, and just to be present and open for whatever wants to come through. And that doesn't mean that I will immediately act on it, but I want to kind of be really open and have a space for things to land. So I want to put that in place. I also really want to nourish my body. So for me, in Scottish winter, that means overnight nettle tea, vitamin D supplements, having nice hot bath when I've been outside and I got really cold, working with my sad lamp to get some more daylight. It might be different for you, but now is a good time to think about what your body might need to, to go through this time with comfort and grace and joy and pleasure. You might also want to talk to your family and friends about what would be meaningful for you in holidays. Again, I think for so many of us, we've really been rethinking what the holidays mean, whichever you celebrate or whether you celebrate them at all. And so I don't really exchange many gifts anymore. And I really like that because I have what I need and I want to share handmade things with people. But I'm definitely not going to go out and spend a lot of money on gifts or packaging or things that people don't actually really need. But I really want to schedule time with my friends, especially those that I can't see in person, for a walk at the beach, to just check in over the holidays to see how everyone is doing. And that feels good and important to me. If you want to give gifts, maybe now is a nice time to balance the work in your business with some crafting, maybe making candles or hand-drawn cards or some watercolor paintings. Whatever feels joyful for you, but if you start now, it's not going to get stressful in December, and that can only be a good thing, right? And then you might also want to think about how you feel about the rush in January that often happens. So what I mean is, like, obviously there's this myth of like, let's all go to the gym, which is pretty boring. But the reality is that it will come, and so for me it feels better to think about that now, and to think about how I want to position myself at that time. I don't want to be in a situation in mid-January where I feel like, oh my god, everyone is offering these amazing things and launching programs and everyone is jumping on these bandwagons, and I either then kind of launch something prematurely that I haven't really thought out because I feel pressure to do so because everyone is doing it, or I feel kind of like left out or like I haven't put in enough or I'm kind of behind. So I decided for myself what I want to do is offer the free weekend retreat that's part of the livelihood community, but other people can join it. And after that, I maybe will offer a live round of a program. I have a few courses that people can study at their own pace, and then a few times a year I offer live rounds of them, which is really fun. I love teaching those, but I don't know which one I feel like doing, if any. So anyway, I feel okay about that. That feels clear to me. I'm not needing to do anything big this year in January, but I am really excited for that weekend and I hope you'll join us. And maybe if you want to, then now is a good time to think about whether you want to offer anything special in January as the year begins, or if you really want to be intentionally kind of stepping back from that energy and not do that, which is also totally okay. But yeah, take a moment if you like to think about what you need, think about clearing space, blocking your calendar, having good boundaries, thinking about what you need and want from the holidays, talking to your loved ones, and then also thinking about how you want to start the year. Thank you so much for listening. Again, please join my retreats. I'd love to see you there. And I'm wishing you a beautiful day.